Okay, we're going to be in Daniel chapter 3. We're going to be looking at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You're going to see that there's going to continue to be more trials. Just because you face one trial and you've managed to beat that trial or come through that trial on the victorious side, there's going to be more. You're going to spend your entire life going through temptations, going through trials. So we're going to see here that Nebuchadnezzar, and I want you on your own to read the entire chapter, but Nebuchadnezzar is going to make this giant golden image. He's going to put it out there in the plain. He's going to have a dedication ceremony to it. He's going to call all the people out there, and whenever the people play music, everybody is to fall down and worship this golden image. So that's going to be a little bit of a problem for if you're Jewish, if you're the people of Judah there that are captive, because they are not supposed to have any graven images, and they're not supposed to worship any other gods. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. So the sad thing that you're going to see when you read this is in verse 8, it says, "Wherefore at that time certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Jews." But they only bring 3 Jews, which is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So when you read the story, they're going to have this massive plain of thousands of people, thousands upon thousands of people, all bowing down and worshiping this image, except for 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You're talking about needing the strength of the Lord at a time to stand up and do what's right instead of doing what everybody else is doing. Imagine that, being 3 people out of thousands to refuse to bow down. And, it's not so much that they just had to bow down. In verse 6 it says, "And whoso falleth not down and worshipeth shall the same hour be cast in the midst of a burning fiery furnace." So not only were they signaling themselves out as being different, they were facing the death penalty. But they were determined to do what is right. They were not going to bow down and worship this golden statue, this golden idol. And so they bring the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego before Nebuchadnezzar, and he's mad, and he asked him in verse 14, it says, "Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not ye serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up. Now if ye be ready, that at what time ye hear the sound of the cornet, flute, harp, sackbut, psaltery, and dulcimer, and all kinds of music, ye fall down and worship the image which I have made, well. But if ye worship it not, ye shall be cast the same hour into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands?" So he's really getting big here. He's giving them one last chance to fall down and worship his golden image, and he's basically challenging them. Who's going to save you? Who is your God to save you? Shadrach, Meshach, verse 16, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this manner. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thy hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship that golden image which thou hast set up." So they put their faith in God and said, if he decides to save us from the fiery furnace, well be. If he decides to not spare us from that fiery furnace, we don't care. We're not bowing down and worshiping that golden image. We're not worshiping your gods. We're not going to be moved from our trust and our faith and our belief in the living God. 19 says, "Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace 17 times more than it was wont to be heated." So he was so angry and so mad that he had that furnace heated up 7 times hotter than it was supposed to have been. "And he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their hosen, and their hats, and other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace." So they had all their clothes on, they're bound, and they're cast into the furnace. Therefore, verse 22, therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent, and that the furnace exceeding hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So they had the furnace so hot that when the men went to toss them into the furnace, the men that were throwing them in were consumed by the flames. Verse 23, and these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound in the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonied, that simply means astonished, and rose up in haste and spake and said unto the counselors, did not we cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? And they answered and said unto the king, true, O king. And Nebuchadnezzar, he answered and said, lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. What you see right here is what we call a theophany. That was Jesus Christ, pre-incarnate. Jesus Christ was down in that fiery furnace with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and the fire did them no harm. When you stand up and you do what is right, when you're living for God, God is going to be there with you in the midst of that tribulation, in the midst of that trial, in the midst of whatever you're going through. He is right there with you. Verse 26, then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spake and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, ye servants of the Most High God, come forth and come hither. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth of the midst of the fire. And the princes, governors, and captains, and the king's counselors, being gathered together, saw these men upon whose bodies the fire had no power, nor was a hair of their head singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. It's not always easy to do the right thing, but man, the blessings that you can get when you do the right thing, knowing that God is with you when you're being tempted and when you're feeling all that pressure, regardless of where that pressure is coming from, God is with you, and He will be with you through that storm. Do not lose your faith in God when it comes to doing those right things, when it comes to being in those hard positions and making tough decisions. Serve God, and God will not fail you.